Howdy folks, Bluesboyjag here with yet another cigar box guitar, except I don't have another cigar box guitar. Um, some of you may have seen some posts that I put on Facebook 2-3 weeks ago about a new amp that I got. So I've had several people locally and on the internet ask me about the amp and about my live settings for this amp. So I thought I would do a video for those of you interested in it. The interesting thing about these older amps is that several companies made different named models that had the same guts in them for many different companies. And this particular amp is one of those. It's a 1948 amp made by a company called Valco, and they made a lot of amps for Supro, and they made amps for a company called McKinney as well. So let me flip this over and you can take a look at it. It's a 1948 Valco, and this logo on it is a Supro logo. It's been a little bit difficult to find specs on this amp. It's somewhere between 12 and 15 watts to the best of my ability to determine on the internet. There are similar amps that came out after this one, 1949, 1950, 51, 52, all the way through 55. And those are the ones that I can find the amperage specs. Anyway, here is the amp. Hopefully you can see that. There we go. I got this flipped around. So it's not very big. It's probably about 18 inches by 18 inches or so. It weighs probably about 6 or 7 pounds. That's the front of it, and you can see the Supro logo there. The handle broke, so I put my dad's old belt on there for a handle. Works great. So there's no back on this amp, and that's by design. And all it has is 2 inputs, an on-off switch, and a volume control. Very simple. The fact that this has an open back, I would assume, explains its very loud volume given its low wattage. And no tone control on this amp, which is not uncommon for that era. And for those of you going, no tone control, you can't do that. It is incredible. It's got an amazing balance tone-wise. It's got an amazing bass response. So if you're playing, in my case, I play blues. So I'm doing those big chunky ninth chords. Oh my God! Unbelievable bass response for such a tiny amp. I've got a 61 Fender Super, which I love. Unfortunately, it's too damn loud, like too damn loud times 20. Way too loud to get the tone that I want with a little bit of breakup. The cool thing about this little Valco McKinney is I can set that thing all the way up, and in a small club venue, sometimes it's almost too loud, so I have to set it back a little bit further back on the stage and angle it just right. And that's just amazing. So here is the pedal board that I use. And over the years, I've swapped out many pedals to tweak my tone just right. When I had the Fender Super, I got the tone sounding amazing with this little booster pedal here. What that does is it makes it sound like you're on 9 when you're on 2. Unfortunately, when you're on 2, it's not quite as fat, and the lead guitar doesn't have the bloom effect and doesn't have a lot of the harmonics popping out, and so it sounds a little thin. But with this amp, that problem is gone. The only issue is on some songs I prefer just a little bit more treble, like 10% more treble. So I bought that sucker right there. I've been using Boss pedals since about 1979, and I swear by them. So as you can see, I've got everything Boss except for the Polytune tuner. So I use the Fender Reverb, emulation pedal, which is the old huge Fender reverb tank emulator, and it sounds incredible. It's got your dwell, tone, and volume, and I tweak that per the venue, and oh my goodness, just shimmering, just shimmering. I use the equalizer to add just a little bit of high end. I bring the top treble, just one or two of those up a tiny bit, and it adds that beautiful shimmer. And you add the reverb on top, oh my goodness, stupendous, absolutely friggin' stupendous. If I need just a little bit more boost, a little bit more grunge, Blues Driver comes in handy. And I have the delay on, a slapback echo all the time, and a polytune tuner. So you can play gigs, blues gigs, rock gigs with this amp with no pedals at all. To me, it's 99% perfect, just the pedal by itself. I prefer on some songs to have just a little bit more treble, which is why I use the equalizer. And I do love that old style big honking reverb in the background. And this little Fender reverb emulation pedal is the shit. If that's what you're into, the big fat reverb, of course you can tweak it to where it's little tiny skinny reverb or however you want it. But the old school blues is what I play, so I like that old school kind of rough, sloppy, kind of fat, kind of slimy reverb. Oh my goodness, that is the pedal, folks. Right there, 63 Fender reverb. So yes, you can use this amp without any pedals at all. I prefer just a little bit more treble, and I prefer the reverb on top. And we do play a couple of rock influenced blues tunes, so I prefer to use my Blues Driver to get just a little bit more of that rock tone. There you go. It's the smallest amp I've ever used. It's the lightest amp I've ever used. And ratio size to volume, by far, the loudest amp I've ever used. 1948 Valco McKinney. And this is called a Supreme. That's the model. These are quite rare. The company made a whole slew of amps, just tons and tons and tons for many, many, many years. And this was originally, if I understand correctly, a lap steel amp. The volume is just stunning. Most people, if you brought this to a gig, they would laugh at you. But if you mic this and you played in a hard rock band, from say a small venue up to say a showcase venue that seats 800 to 1,000 or even more. I mean, I saw a band, can't remember the name of them, opened up for Rush in 1977-78 in Little Rock, and he had a Fender Champ on stage. That is it. He had a boom mic stand going, boom mic stand going up, going right back down all the way to the floor, right in front of a Fender Champ. A Fender Champ. And that's like a, I don't know, 8-10 watt amp. Little dinky amp. I mean, it was bigger than the 6-pack that was probably sitting on stage at the time. So, and they mic'd it and they ran it through the monitors, and it sounded friggin' incredible. Same deal. Same deal, folks. So there you go. 1948 McKinney Valco Supreme.